the main event, right? Everybody wants to know what is going on at Intel. I guess only maybe more so than Jaguar's interesting ad campaign was Intel CEO leaving for Thanksgiving and then coming back on a Monday, but not coming back on a Monday on a kind of date marked Sunday. So on the Sunday following Thanksgiving, did Pat Gelsinger retire, resign, leave? Was he forced out? I mean, look, you and I, there's probably more than enough speculation of what we think on the record. I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on that here. There's links in the show notes, CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, our team, ourselves. We've been everywhere on this topic. I'll put the TLDR for everybody out there that didn't look and read everything that we've already had to say. There's absolutely a 0% chance that this was just woke up on Friday after Thanksgiving with too much tryptophan and Pat calls up the board and says, I'm leaving on Monday. Something came to a head. Bottom line is there's a lot of speculation. Some rumors are rising to the surface. We are here to try to provide our best perspectives. We're also not here to give or lend credibility to bad rumors or even unconfirmed rumors. We, of course, as analysts, I think have earned some right to speculate at times of what's going on. But look, I still believe deep down, and this is pretty obvious from my commentary, is this is a foundry-led capex and investment-led decision of, how do you carry forward on the foundry business? How do you keep throwing this much capital into it? How do you do it without a customer that's not Intel or now named Intel Products, or at least a customer at scale that's not named one of those things? And, I think there's a lot of external pressure for a split. There's a lot of external pressure for a split, and Pat has been steadfast that is not something he's interested in doing. And so my guess is that has something to do with it. You and I had the chance, I think both separately, to briefly sit down with the new co-CEOs, David Zizner and Michelle Johnston's Holthaus. The meetings are under NDA. So I want to be very clear. There's not a ton. I know we teased out there and everybody want to know, but I did promise to give some perspective. And the perspective that I have is that, like every large company on the planet, there are no options closed off right now. Meaning that, what we're hearing and what we're hearing from the leadership is really business as usual. They're continuing down the path of products in a separate governance model for Foundry. The plan, is to continue to push 18A and to put great products out on 18A, Intel products largely. To continue marching towards that next node, 14A, which has some advantages in areas like mobile. Where Michelle sits on the product side in that new role of CEO of Intel Products. Clearly, that's people will argue with me about this, but that is a very healthy business. If you actually had the products business if there was no foundry and they just worked with TSMC, and actually we're seeing this right now with Lunar, they're able to put out a very good quality part. And so, the world kind of asked that question. Well, if the products can work with TSMC and put out a part, could they just be another AMD? Could they be another NVIDIA? And so I think that's a question, but let me be very clear. Part of what makes Intel very unique has always been its IDM, has always been its capabilities to build a fully integrated design and then manufacture these parts. And I will stand by my belief that the world, and this is something I took away from the meeting, still believe the world needs a strong Intel, and the US needs a strong alternative to foundry. And so my take is there is a goal to come out with a plan. Now, could it be a spinoff, Pat? Could it be a new external capital come in? I did a lot of research on that, by the way. There's a lot of speculation that they can't split, and they can split. But if they split and they want to keep the CHIPS Act money, they have to commit to doing the exact commitments that they made to get the CHIPS Act money.
So there's no ownership, 51% in there, Dan?
As long as the new ownership. Now, this is how I read it. I want to be clear, because I'm not the attorney. I've not read all the legal contracts. But the way I read my research was that if the assuming partner or the assuming investment group is willing to continue on the exact same commitments that were made by Intel in order to get funding, they can assume it. Now, there are also national security requirements. So it can't be, You can't, Huawei couldn't do it. It couldn't be some Chinese company. And even TSMC, I had people, Pat, ask me, like, would TSMC assume it? And the answer is no. TSMC, it does not work. The whole idea of Intel being the national champion foundry was that Intel would be a US-based company that would add leading edge capabilities, that would manufacture chips for leading edge fabless designers. That would be Broadcom, Qualcomm, NVIDIA, and AMD. So that if, by the way, anything ever happened between China and Taiwan, if that risk ever went overboard, we wouldn't be without our stuff. And by the way, when I say our stuff, I mean, first and foremost, it's security, it's servers, it's data centers, national security, all that stuff. And then, by the way, Pat, it's cars, phones, PCs, and all the things that we need to run an economy. It's not, I think people sometimes don't take the threat of the China-Taiwan situation seriously enough. But even if we have tons of great TSMC fabs here in the U.S., if something happens between China and Taiwan, that will be impacted here in the manufacturing here as well. And also, Taiwan's always been a bit hesitant to give their most leading manufacturing and bringing it here. And I know there's conversations about that. So my take here, Pat, is we still need a solution. There's still belief within the ranks at Intel that they can be the foundry of the U.S. But there's a lot of proof that needs to be done. And by the way, there's a lot of capital that's going to be required. And the CHIPS Act money is just not enough. The $8 billion, and I think that was sort of an insult to Intel. It was an insult to the whole situation that so many dollars went to non-U.S. based companies off the CHIPS Act. And I think that might have been part of what started the sideways relationship between Pat and the board going back to the Lip-Bu-Tan, was that, why did Intel not get more? What is not being done? So there's a lot more here. I'm going to let you kind of chime in, maybe boomerang it back if it makes sense.
Yeah. So first off, Pat had a tough job coming in, right? Company was 3 to 4 years behind in process transistor tech, and I would say 2 to 3 years behind in design. To call this a turnaround is an understatement. And Pat had a lot of accomplishments under his tenure, and I do believe that he's the only person on the planet who could have gotten this into motion and gotten most of this over the line, right? He did do 5 nodes in 4 years. I didn't believe that was humanly possible. And it's not just money. He got the money to do this, which, of course, dragged the stock down. So he did this. And, we can debate the quality of 18A. I mean, 18A doesn't go into HVM for another 6 months, but the fact that it's booting silicon is a good sign. Booting is not representative of yield or defect density rate. It's just that it's good. So things could fall off. I mean, things could go poorly. We just don't know yet. And on the design side, there wasn't a single shipping design that was a distributed design. They were all monolithic. AMD had been doing monolithic designs for 3 or 4 years. So those were the accomplishments. Now, the biggest issue that I can put on Pat and the leadership team there was how could they not have a TOPS monster low precision fielded in 3 to 4 years? We saw AMD do this with a lot less resources. Why couldn't Ponte Vecchio be refactored from a high precision FLOPS monster to a low precision TOPS monster? AMD did it, folks. AMD went and they won all of these national labs designs, turned around, and now, it's a $5 billion business. How could Intel not do that, right? So that hangs on his head. The die had been cast before with Ponte Vecchio and on Gaudi. Gaudi is a good product, a very good product. Challenge is that the hyperscalers built their own for the most part. And if they're going to put work into the software. They're going to put it into their own, into their own silicon. Let me move around to the conversation we had with the co-CEOs. While it was an NDA conversation, everything we talked about was very consistent with what came out at the UBS conference. No change on 18A, no change on product roadmaps or timelines. Why the company couldn't come out with a press release and say that, I have no idea. This is probably the worst CEO transition announcement I have ever seen in my entire career. And the only thing that comes close is when the AMD board, the inept AMD board, fired Dirk Meyer from AMD, basically a design god. And why did they fire Dirk? Because Dirk didn't get them into the smartphone business, and the board was stinging that NVIDIA won a couple awards at that year's CES. Made no sense, and I believe that firing Dirk Meyer led to what was what ended up could have been the downfall of AMD, and it went into a very, very dark place. So, with that said, hey, 18A and product roadmaps being on time, new milestones hit every week. Okay. And this thing could change. I know there's I think in UBS, they talked about a major milestone hitting soon. I didn't look through the whole transcript of what that was, but here is something I am seeing, even though to this day, I have no idea exactly why Intel and the board got sideways. Was it death of 1,000 cuts, right? Was it, I've heard lack of product focus, too much focus on the foundry. I've heard not enough progress on the foundry, and you had laid that out. But with the new management team, I am hearing customer focus, product focus, and hardcore execution mindsets. Could we see a restatement of schedules that say, okay, we only publish 90% schedules? I don't know. Intel did that before. And by the way, Lisa Su, when she came in, she reset everything. And so I feel like we're getting to best products. By the way, MJ is CEO of products. And hey, I've heard some people say, oh, MJ, she's not a PhD. Look at all the product leaders. We've got Lisa Su. We have Jensen, right? And here's the deal. And maybe I'm biased because I do not have a technical degree. If you surround yourself with the best technologists, but you inherently know and have a better feeling of what your customers want than I have, you and I both have a lot of executive communications talking to, you really want to talk, don't you?
No, I was just going to laugh. What degree did Steve Jobs have?
It was an arts degree, I think.
I don't know if he finished. Anyways, Zach,
go on. So Joe, where was I on this? But what I have heard of a criticism of Pat is he just didn't listen to his customers. And I think MJ, what I hear, and again, you and I talk to the executives of all her largest customers, I hear very positive things about MJ, and I want to give this. She deserves a chance to drive products. And to be blunt, I think if she were running products before, we would have a low precision TOPS monster, and versus something that esoterically looks good on paper. So I'm going to give this a chance. Listen, Pat is the only person who could ever get to the company where it is now. And quite frankly, those people who are just casting overall dispersions, you've probably never done this before. Okay. You've probably never worked for a semiconductor company or you've never worked for a customer of a semiconductor company. Am I passionate about this? Yeah, I'm pretty passionate. Does this give me flashbacks of my 11-year tenure at AMD? Heck yes, it does. Anyways, tune in, hit me on social media, hit us up on social media with any questions you have coming aside of it. But what I loved about our conversation with the co-CEOs was it was consistent with the UBS. So, but they just needed to be more direct. Just say it. And I hope they can do this. I mean, their stock is down 16% on the week.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't need anybody to tell me, yeah, 16% on the week. This rollout was a failure.
Yeah, the initial bump, I think people thought there'd be an announcement to follow quickly.
I know.
And then they took a breath and then they went, holy crap, this is going to be really hard. Now we should be cheering as people, you know, unless you're short and you're just an ass. But the point is like, we should be cheering for Intel to succeed. We need competition in products and we need availability and scale in production. And so there aren't a lot of options. And I'm Pat M, Little Pat, as Big Pat used to call you. I'm glad you pointed out the accomplishments, because I do think in many ways that the way this ended was probably very unjust to an almost 4-decade career.
That's such a good human. He's such a good human.
Yeah, someone that gave so much of his self to the business. And like you said, people just don't understand the hard decisions sometimes of having to make changes, make cuts. I got asked twice this week in 2 different programs, what would Musk do? You know, and of course, when you're callous and completely callous to these kinds of things, you could go in and cut 50% of the workforce and not blink. That's a different kind of leader. And yes, that probably would drive more returns to shareholders. But cultures matter too. It's not right or wrong. Yeah. Anyways, we could beat this one. This is another one that could be a whole show. We could go for a long time. There's going to be more here. It's not over. And you know, there's a lot of work to be done over at Intel. And I can assure you both, Pat M, Little Pat and I, will be commenting a lot on this in the coming days, weeks, and months. Stay tuned.